This is the voice of Oculvra. We invite you with us on this journey to another world. So please, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and relax. The booking came through on a Tuesday afternoon, right as the heat was turning the marina into a simmering pan of metal and salt. I almost ignored the call. Wealthy clients had a way of draining the joy out of boats, turning decks into stages, oceans into backdrops. But something about this one made me pick up. The man's voice was calm, precise, almost bored by his own money. He wanted an isolated party, no nearby traffic, no lights on the horizon, just ocean. He said it the way people say privacy, like it was a basic human right. Then he told me about the yacht. A week before the event, it would be dropped off at my dock. My job, beyond captaining it during the party, was to take it out alone and scout the perfect location. Open-ended, no fuel limits, no restrictions. When I hung up, I realized I was smiling. The yacht arrived the next morning just after sunrise, gliding in like it owned the water. 90 feet of pure beauty. I walked its decks slowly, barefoot, letting my hand trail along the rail. Everything smelled new, polished teak, faint engine oil, filtered air. The cabins were untouched, and beds still stiff with factory creases. Whoever owned this thing hadn't slept on it yet, hadn't lived on it, and for 1 week, neither would they. By noon, I had cleared the harbor. Miami fell away behind me, glass towers dissolving into heat haze, the noise thinning until all that remained was wind and engine hum. I set a steady course east, then southeast, letting the yacht stretch its legs. She handled beautifully, responsive, eager, like she'd been waiting. Out here without clients, without itineraries, time softened. I ate when I was hungry, slept when I felt like it, and enjoyed life. I tested locations like the client asked, wide patches of open water, far from shipping lanes, spots where the sea went dark and deep, so suddenly it felt like the world dropped away beneath you. One afternoon, while checking coordinates, I realized how far I'd drifted south without noticing. The instrument said I was nearing a familiar stretch of ocean. One sailors talked about half-jokingly, half-not, that being the Bermuda Triangle. I laughed at myself. These stories were for tourists and late-night radio. The sea didn't care about myths. For the next few days, I stayed close to the Miami coast, circling familiar waters like I was seeing them for the first time. Not because they had changed, but because I had. Everything looks different when you're standing on a yacht that turns heads before it even makes a wake. I learned the boat the way you learn an animal. Slowly, respectfully, how she leaned into turns, how much throttle she wanted before she purred instead of growled, how the controls responded with a softness I wasn't used to. No strain, no hesitation. She didn't fight me. She anticipated me. By the second day, my hands moved without thinking. I could dock her cleanly, confidently, even with eyes watching. And there were always eyes watching. At marinas, conversations paused when I came in. On the water, smaller boats adjusted course just to trail behind for a moment longer. I caught my reflection once in a mirrored high-rise window. Me at the helm, sunglasses on, posture relaxed, and I almost didn't recognize myself. I looked like the kind of man I usually resented. The funny thing was how easily the world accepted the illusion. Nobody asked questions. Nobody wondered how I'd suddenly become that guy. Wealth in Miami didn't need explanations. It only needed visibility. A clean deck, a quiet engine, a man who looked like he belonged at the wheel. That was enough. I took her everywhere I wasn't supposed to go with clients. Past the party coves, away from the tour routes. I cut the engines miles offshore and let the yacht drift while I swam alone in open water, the hull rising and falling beside me like a breathing thing. I cooked simple meals in a kitchen designed for chefs and ate them slowly, barefoot, music low. No schedules, no demands, no rich voices asking if the champagne was cold enough or if the horizon always looked this empty. This was how it was supposed to be. I imagined selling my company, imagined handing the keys to someone else and disappearing quietly. Every return to the harbor felt like waking up, snapping me out of my yacht fantasy. The next evening, I waited until the sun had fully surrendered before leaving the marina. The city lights still burned behind me, but I knew they'd disappear fast once I pushed far enough out. The party would be at night, and if I was going to captain this thing properly, I needed to feel confident navigating this yacht in the dark. I'd been on the ocean at night plenty of times before, enough to respect it, enough to know better, and still, every time, the same thought returned. Nothing prepares you for how completely the sea erases itself after sunset. Once the shoreline lights thinned, the water stopped reflecting anything at all. The horizon dissolved. The sky and ocean merged into a single black surface, broken only by the slow glow of instruments and the faint white line of wake behind me. It felt less like moving through space and more like drifting inside it. I throttled back and let my eyes adjust. The yacht handled beautifully, steady and sure, but the darkness pressed in all the same. No landmarks, no depth cues, just the hum of engines and the occasional slap of water against the hull. That's when I saw the light. At first it was just a soft glow high above the horizon, small, distant, easy to dismiss. I assumed it was just a helicopter, maybe Coast Guard, maybe someone else with money to burn and nothing better to do at night. It moved slowly, steadily, heading away from shore, deeper out. I kept my course and watched it casually. Then the color shifted. The light faded from white to a pale blue, then to something warmer, amber maybe, before pulsing briefly into green, not flashing like navigation lights, not sweeping like a searchlight. It changed smoothly. I slowed the yacht. Helicopters didn't do that. Neither did planes. Drones, maybe, but not at that altitude, not with that kind of calm, controlled movement. The light wasn't wobbling or fighting wind. It wasn't cutting across the sky. I felt a familiar itch settle into my chest. The same one I'd had since I was a kid, staring up at the stars, imagining routes and destinations I'd never take. I told myself to mark it and turn back. Told myself it wasn't my business, that I'd come out here for practice, not distractions. But my hand stayed on the throttle, and without fully deciding to, I adjusted my heading just enough to keep the light centered ahead. The yacht responded effortlessly, slicing forward like it had been waiting for direction. The shoreline lights behind me grew smaller, weaker. The light ahead seemed to hold its distance, never speeding up, never slowing down, as if it knew exactly how fast I could go. As I followed it, the sea grew quieter. No other boats, no radio chatter. Even the wind felt muted, like the world had narrowed to a corridor between me and that drifting glow. Time stopped behaving normally once I committed to following the light. Minutes stretched, then collapsed. The glow ahead of me no longer moved in a straight line. It surged forward without warning, then froze in place as if pinned to the sky. Sometimes it drifted backward, slowly, deliberately, like it was reconsidering me. Other times it climbed straight up, vanishing into low cloud before dropping back down at a different angle altogether. And yet, through all its erratic motions, one thing stayed constant. It was pulling me farther out, away from shore, away from familiarity, deeper into open ocean. I adjusted course again and again, eyes locked upward, hands working the controls without conscious thought. The yacht cut through the dark with quiet confidence, but I barely felt it anymore. My body was there. My attention was somewhere else entirely. A trance isn't dramatic when you're inside it. It feels natural, like any alternative would be a mistake. It wasn't until I glanced down at the navigation screen that the spell cracked. The coastline was gone. The map showed nothing but black water in every direction, my position a lone marker suspended in empty space. I zoomed out. Miami was a faint smudge far behind me, and the projected return time made my stomach tighten. I had gone much farther than I realized. Guilt hit hard and fast. This wasn't my boat. This wasn't my risk to take. I imagined explaining this to the client. Burned fuel, logged miles, the possibility of damage, and felt suddenly foolish, like a kid who'd wandered too far, chasing something shiny. I looked back up at the light. It hovered there patiently. Enough, I muttered, though the word had no weight behind it. I reached for the wheel, ready to turn back, to end whatever this was before it got worse. That was when the light changed again. Without warning, a beam dropped straight down from it, brilliant, white-edged with gold, cutting through the darkness and striking the ocean below. The water ignited with brightness, not reflected light, but something deeper, as if the sea itself had been switched on. It was like sudden daylight had been poured into the ocean. I could see everything. Fish scattered in perfect clarity, schools twisting like living fabric, sharks cruising far below, massive and unbothered. The seafloor itself seemed visible at impossible depth, layered and alive. It felt wrong to be able to see that far, that clearly, like I'd been given vision meant for something else. I left the helm without thinking and rushed to the deck, gripping the rail as I leaned over the side. The light pierced straight through the water beneath me. No distortion, no darkness, just depth after depth unfolding. I laughed. Then I shouted. I don't know what I said. I don't even know who I was shouting to. The sound tore out of me on its own, raw and unplanned, like my body needed to acknowledge what it was witnessing. The light above shifted. Another beam descended, this one wider, softer, and enveloped the yacht. It washed over the deck, the rail, my hands, my chest. Warmth spread through me instantly, not heat, but something gentler, almost intimate. My muscles loosened, my thoughts softened. Bliss crept in, heavy and undeniable, like sinking into warm water after being cold too long. I tried to look up, but the brightness was overwhelming. I couldn't see the shape of the craft anymore, just radiance, layered and alive, humming in a way I felt more than heard. Then, just as suddenly, it faded. The ocean went dark again. The beam vanished. The light above dimmed, lifted, and slipped back into the clouds as if it had never been there at all. I stood there swaying, disoriented, heart pounding, skin still tingling where the light had touched me. I should have turned back. Instead, I ran for the helm, eyes scanning the sky, hands steady with purpose. Whatever that was, whatever had just seen me, touched me. I needed to know more. I pushed the throttle forward and followed it deeper into the night. I glanced down at the navigation, expecting nothing more than empty ocean. Instead, a familiar shape formed on the map, subtle at first, then undeniable as I zoomed out. Lines I'd seen 100 times in documentaries and late-night specials framed my position with quiet precision. I realized I'm in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. The light moved again, steady now, no longer playful or erratic. It felt deliberate, as if whatever was guiding it had finally decided I was ready. I followed without checking the instruments, without questioning distance or fuel or consequence. The ocean beneath me darkened, then suddenly bloomed with color as the ship released its beam once more. This time it didn't just illuminate fish and shadows. Far below, impossibly deep, a city revealed itself, vast and ancient, stretching across the ocean floor like a dream someone had buried and forgotten. Towers rose in slow, organic curves, not built but grown, their surfaces glowing with soft blues, ambers, and pearlescent whites. Pathways of light connected structures like veins, pulsing gently, alive. Massive shapes moved between them, graceful silhouettes too large to fully comprehend, drifting with purpose. An entire civilization, hidden beneath centuries of pressure and darkness. My mind didn't race. It went quiet. Before I could think, before fear or reason could intervene, my body moved. I kicked off my shoes, climbed the railing, and dove. The water swallowed me whole. Cold surged through my limbs, but it didn't matter. I swam hard, pulled by something stronger than gravity. The city grew clearer with every stroke. I could hear nothing but the rush of my own movement. My heartbeat loud in my ears. The lights below shimmered and refracted, turning the water into liquid glass. My lungs began to burn, but I ignored it. Every instinct screamed that was impossible, that no man could reach something so deep. But those thoughts dissolved as quickly as they formed. The city felt closer than distance allowed, as if space itself had folded to invite me in. The burning intensified, my chest tightened. Panic flickered for the first time, sharp and brief. I needed air. Without meaning to, I opened my mouth. Water rushed in, not salt, not choking. It flowed into me smoothly, filling my lungs without pain, without resistance. I expected agony, the violent rejection of my body's final mistake. Instead, there was only a strange heaviness, followed by an overwhelming calm. I was drowning, and I didn't care. The city's light wrapped around me, radiant and inviting. I felt awe so profound it erased fear entirely. If this was the end, it was a beautiful one. My limbs grew heavy. The effort to swim faded. I drifted, suspended between surface and abyss, watching the civilization pulse and breathe beneath me like a living heart. My vision softened. The lights blurred into halos, then stars. The last thing I felt was a sense of being welcomed. Then the ocean went dark, and I slipped into nothing. I woke, sitting upright, perched on a smooth pillar of pale stone that rose far above a vast open floor. For a moment I thought I was still drowning, that this was some hallucination my brain had invented to soften the end. Then I breathed in. Air filled my lungs easily. I was alive. The space around me stretched outward like a cathedral, designed by a mind that did not care about gravity or right angles. Walls slanted and folded into one another at impossible geometries, arching upward into darkness that glowed faintly from within. I looked down. Below me were objects that made my stomach drop. Boats, wooden fishing vessels, rusted trawlers, sleek modern yachts, airplanes suspended in midair as if frozen in the moment of falling, cars from different eras, satellites, compasses, old radios, even fragments of architecture, all of them arranged carefully, reverently, like exhibits. And then I saw the people. They sat or stood on pillars just like mine, scattered throughout the enormous chamber, men and women of different ages, ethnicities, and time periods. Some wore old uniforms, some modern clothes, some garments I didn't recognize at all. They all looked healthy. Too healthy. No scars, no sickness, no sign of aging. But their eyes were hollow. They stared off, eyes dulled by something far worse than fear. Resignation, the kind that settles in when hope has nowhere left to go. "Hello?" My voice echoed strangely, bending as it traveled. A man to my right shifted. He was young, maybe early 20s, with sharp features and close-cropped dark hair. He wore a military pilot's uniform I recognized only vaguely from old photographs. The insignia meant nothing to me, but the style did, definitely from World War II. "Hey," I called again. "What's your name?" He turned slowly, as if movement itself was a decision that required effort. "Even," he said, his accent thick but clear. My heart began to race. "Where are you from, Ivan?" "Russia," he said. Then after a pause, "It still exists, yes." Something inside my head cracked. I told him the war was over. I told him how it ended. I told him how long ago it had been. Each sentence seemed to weigh more than the last. He listened quietly, nodding once, as if he had already suspected the truth, but feared hearing it spoken aloud. "I was flying reconnaissance," he said finally. "Covert, over the ocean near Miami. We were tracking shipping routes. Then I saw the light. At first I thought it was a United States fighter coming to get me. But then I saw this beautiful light." My stomach tightened. "It was stunning," he continued. "White at first, then gold. It moved slowly, like it wanted me to follow. I remember thinking, just a little farther, just to see. What an idiot I was, following shiny objects in the sky." He looked down at his hands. "I woke up here." "How long have you been here?" I asked. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Time does not behave normally here. I do not sleep. I do not eat. I do not grow old. My body is perfect." His voice dropped. "I do not know how long I've been here, and soon, neither will you." I looked around again at the pillars, the artifacts, the fragments of human history. "This is a museum," I whispered. Ivan nodded. "Yes, and we are the exhibits." Ivan's voice dropped lower, as if the walls themselves could hear him. "They come regularly," he said. "Not on a schedule, we understand. Sometimes days apart, sometimes what feels like minutes. You'll feel them before you see them." "Who?" I asked. "The caretakers," Ivan said. "Or the observers. I don't know what to call them. They are triangular." I laughed once, sharply, from nerves. "Triangular? What does that even mean?" "You'll see," he replied. As if summoned by our conversation, the light in the hall shifted. It didn't dim or brighten. It tilted. The atmosphere thickened, like pressure before a storm, and every instinct in my body screamed to look up and not look up at the same time. They descended without sound. Three-dimensional triangles, impossibly precise, floating through the air as though space bent to make room for them. Each face shimmered with layers of color that didn't stay still. Pearlescent whites, deep blues, veins of gold that pulsed slowly. They were solid and not solid, their edges too sharp to be real, yet softly radiant. Their movement was deliberate, slow, reverent. They drifted from pillar to pillar, stopping in front of humans the way someone might pause before a painting. My heart pounded. I tried to pull back, but my body wouldn't move. "We are like lions in a zoo," Ivan said quietly. "Objects of curiosity, pets." "What do they want?" I whispered. Ivan shook his head. "Luckily, they do not take us apart. They do not ask questions. They simply observe. Our artifacts matter more to them than we do, which in a weird way kind of insults me. Like you're telling me an airplane is more interesting than me. At this point, I'd rather have them take me apart so my mind can be free." One of the triangles drifted closer to me as Ivan talked. Up close, it was worse and more beautiful than I'd imagined. Its surface wasn't smooth. It was layered, like reality stacked on itself. I felt memories stir that weren't mine. A strange warmth ran through my chest, followed by dread so deep it felt ancient. "You'll get used to them," Ivan said, though his voice lacked conviction. "They never do anything." But then I felt a strange recognition to the being floating in front of me. The triangle hovering shifted slightly, its colors reorganizing into a pattern that sent a shock through my spine. I saw the ocean again, the night, the white gold beam cutting through the water, the sense of being invited. It was the same one, the one that lured me here. "You brought me here," I said aloud, my voice echoing strangely. The triangle tilted, just a fraction, as though it were mocking me in a playful way. Something snapped inside me. "I'm not your exhibit," I shouted. The hall vibrated. Ivan shouted my name, but I barely heard him. The triangle pulsed brighter, its gold light flaring as if in response. For a moment I thought I'd angered it, or amused it further. Then the light came from above. Pure white, overwhelming. It poured down onto my pillar, drowning out the hall, the beings, everything. Warmth flooded me again, stronger than before. The last thing I saw was the triangle receding, its colors folding inward. Then the light swallowed me whole, and I blacked out. I woke up, floating on my back in the ocean, the sun blinding me with its intensity, and the cold water wrapping around me like a vice. For a moment, I couldn't even remember where I was. I felt disoriented, dizzy, like I had just been ripped out of a dream. I jolted upright, coughing and sputtering, scanning frantically for the yacht. My heart sank. It wasn't there, not a trace of it. Just me, the endless water, and the horizon that felt impossibly far away. I felt hopeless, cold, and utterly exposed. Fear gripped me like nothing ever had. I wanted to float and let the ocean take me, to drift and surrender to whatever had brought me here. But some stubborn spark inside refused to let me give up. I had to get to shore. Squinting against the sun, I spotted a thin line of sand in the distance. I took a deep breath and kicked off, letting my arms slice through the water. Stroke after stroke, I pushed myself forward, each movement heavier than the last. My lungs burned, my shoulders screamed, and salt stung my eyes, but I forced myself to keep moving. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Time had lost all meaning. My body ached in ways I didn't think were possible, cramping and trembling, but the shore grew slightly bigger with every stroke. Finally, my hands touched sand. I collapsed, coughing, choking, trembling violently. I couldn't stand, couldn't even sit upright. My limbs felt like lead. People were running toward me, their voices a blur of concern and alarm. Towels were thrown over me, hands grabbed me, voices shouted questions I couldn't answer. I could barely process their presence. I lay there shivering, staring at the horizon, half expecting to see that impossible light cutting through the waves again. But there was nothing. I tried to sit up, tried to speak, but my body refused. The warmth of the sun slowly seeped into my numb limbs. Despite my efforts, I passed out once more. I woke up in a hospital bed, the antiseptic smell burning my nostrils, the beeping monitors echoing in my skull. My body ached all over, every muscle screaming in protest, but the doctors kept telling me I was fine. Fine, I thought. I felt anything but fine. Then a doctor lifted the sheet and gasped. I froze. My back. There it was. A triangle burned into my skin, the edges perfectly sharp, glowing faintly red. My stomach twisted. That's it. That's them. The aliens. I couldn't believe it. I touched it gingerly, my fingers trembling. It wasn't a rash, a cut, or a bruise. It was burned into me. I snapped. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I started shouting, throwing my hands in the air, telling them everything. The light, the ocean, Ivan, the triangular beings, the museum, the other humans, everything. The room went silent except for the hum of machines. The doctors stared at me with those blank, polite looks people give when they're sure someone has lost their mind. You don't understand. You have to believe me, I yelled, my voice cracking. They took me. I saw a civilization under the water. There's a place down there. They've been watching us. They left this on me, this mark. I shoved my shirt up to show them again. One nurse backed away. They gave me some sort of sedative, or maybe it was just the exhaustion. I barely remember the rest of the night. The next morning, they discharged me. I stumbled out into the sunlight, still dazed, still shaken, still burning from the inside out. I didn't know where to go, what to do. And then I saw them, the police, and behind them my client, the yacht owner. He looked furious, his expensive suit as crisp as his anger. I froze. My stomach sank. The yacht. I had lost it. I had no way of explaining where it went or why. I had no way to pay for it, no way to make this right. "James," the owner barked, "you're liable for every dime, every cent. The yacht is gone. You will pay." I opened my mouth to speak, to tell him about the light, the ocean, the beings. But the police were already shaking their heads. By the end of the week, I was homeless. My company, my apartment, my savings, all gone or about to be gone. The lawsuit would strip me clean. I walked through the streets of Miami, the sun beating down on me, the burning triangle still throbbing in my back. I had chased the unknown and found it, and it had ruined everything. But even as I trudged forward, hopeless and defeated, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, the light was still waiting, and despite everything, a small, reckless part of me wanted to go back.